All right, guys. Oh, I'm on TV. So now, next on stage, we have one of the founders of Founder-Centric, a big friend of the startup community in Bulgaria. Many of you have probably been to one of his talks. Many of you know him. I'm pleased to welcome on stage Salim Virani. Oh, and while he's getting his mic set up, let me remind you about the hashtag and the really nice speaker I have over there for the one who has tweeted the most.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome on stage.
Thanks, Urso. How are you? Because I'm actually pretty excited. Everyone is very happy to be here, and I know why, because I'm happy to live here. I moved here a year ago. Yeah, I'm really excited about the startup community here. And in particular, I'm excited to start to inject new thinking. I'm one of the partners in Founder-Centric. We operate all over Europe, and we're starting to extend beyond, where we're really just trying to help founders get better in any way we can. You've met two of my partners already. You'll meet Rob tomorrow, and he'll talk a bit about customer development. But today I want to talk about craft, because something I've learned about living in Bulgaria is that people take real pride in what they do. People want to be good at what they do here. And I've noticed that there's a connection between that and the people who truly, truly change the world. Now, you'd normally expect me to talk about Lean Startup. I am the founder of Lean Camp. Been working to bring Lean to Europe for the past 5-6 years now, and connecting it to business models, connecting it to user experience design. But that's a while ago now. And so if I was going to talk about something Japanese, you'd expect me to talk about Toyota. But I'm going to talk about Jiro. Does anyone know Jiro? Yeah, a few of you, right? Jiro is considered one of the best sushi chefs in Japan. And it is an honor if you can work for him, if you want to dedicate your life to being a chef. But it's hard. If you go work for Jiro, the first 10 years of your apprenticeship is on rice. Like that. And then, but then when you get good at rice, then they let you do the eggs. It takes a while to develop a true craft, but the man has created the best sushi. He has revolutionized the industry just based on his practice. His suppliers have to have the same dedication that he does in order to deliver best tuna to him every day. And there's a parallel here. Because with startups, we kind of think we can just start and be really good right away. And and there's a lot of this stuff around, experimentation and lean startup, where it's good to be experimental. It's good to know where you don't, where something's not going to work. But at the same time, the flip side of that coin is we think we can run an experiment and know if our idea is going to pass or fail in the next week. And this is where we see landing pages that just don't make any sense. Right? It's not that your idea, that you weren't on the right track, it was that you suck at landing pages. Sorry, you needed to get better at that. We see this with Facebook advertising too. You throw a few ads out on Facebook, and when nobody clicks, you assume that it's a false signal. You assume that the idea won't work, but actually it's just because you're just bad at Facebook. And there's this skill that you need to get to a certain level before the experiments are going to give you real information. And this is where upskilling comes in, right? You don't climb a mountain to begin with. You practice, you get the skills. And we know this from teaching customer development now for these years, where whenever we hear about people talking about how to do customer development, we think, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now I'm going to go talk to 10 people and I'm going to know if I'm in the right direction or not. But it really comes down to listening, and it comes down to listening skill. So just as a practical side of this, when you're talking to a potential customer, if you're not hearing obstacles, goals, and actions constantly coming up, and I'm talking about 2 or 3 times this will happen per minute, then you probably need to improve your listing skill before you can get the benefit of customer development. But once you start to get good at your craft, once you start to take it on as a craft and say, I'm going to be good at this, you become one with the apparatus you build around you. Right? So your tools start to extend you. A painter has as much dexterity on the tip of the brush as they do with their raw fingers. Does anyone know this painter? This is Vermeer. And for a long time, people were wondering, how did he paint such photorealistic paintings given the technology at the time? There's stuff that he managed to see. Was he a genius? Like there's gradients, there's lighting that is completely accurate. That even today, with today's technology, we measure the capacity of the human eye, and it seems like he must have had a better eye than normal humans. And how did he do that? This is the leading theory now, the camera obscura, where he didn't look at the tools available to him, to the processes and techniques available to painters at the time. He started to look over here. He said, oh, wait, what can I do with this? And he basically created an environment that was based on the camera that allowed him to paint over top of a projection of whatever it was he wanted to paint. Does anybody know this band? Anybody recognize them? They look like a typical 70s band. Does anyone recognize them now? Nobody? One at the back? Kraftwerk, that's right. Now do you recognize them? Pioneers of electronic music. If we go back to that same image in 1971, we can see the beginnings of what I would call a hacker. And so in these days in electronic music, you have a lot of tools to choose from. You can use Reason, you can use Subtractor, there's all sorts of kit you can buy. But if we go back, that Korg, it's a, I think it's a 3300 series or model that they used. They actually hacked the keyboard onto that synthesizer. Korg and Kraftwerk were actually working together. But it was Kraftwerk that was leading the way because the tools available at the time were not good enough for the music they wanted to do. They had to make the tools themselves. And this is a level of craftsmanship that we want to arrive at because our vision is constantly being constrained by the tools, the methodologies, and the processes that we see available to us. And true visionaries know what they want to achieve, and like Kraftwerk, they build the tools. Similar to this, we know the business model canvas. Alex Osterwalder is a friend of mine, but this was designed to be hacked. This was designed to be used in different ways. How many of you have seen this technique? A few of you, right? So this is our version of using the business model canvas, where what we needed it to do wasn't to be a small version of a business plan. It wasn't to be a dashboard for progress. It wasn't to communicate to our investors. It was to keep all of the options, all of the possibilities in one place where we could make decisions as a team. We borrowed from the camera obscura and we used it for painting. This is a great business in London. These guys help startups get free money from the government. They're really amazing at it. And you would think that they're kind of this staid, boring, like, office with a suit, and they'll sit down and they'll help you write a proposal. But if you look behind it at the founders, this is Paulina they've developed technology behind the scenes to allow them to do this very, very efficiently. They've taken this goal that they want to achieve, which is helping startups maximize the money they get from government, and they've borrowed from the technology world and built tech that allows them to grow this business. This is the other thing, is your team starts to become an extension of you. As you find people who share your vision that you can align with, people who you believe in and who believe in you, they become an extension of what you want to achieve, right? They could become part of you. You start to say we instead of I. Right? And we look at this like cameras. So this is the modern world of cameras. Very complicated. You kind of pick your tool and then you learn to use it. But if we go back to the origins of photography, again, we'll see something similar, where photographers, the best photographers, started with the art. They started with what shot do I want to create, and then they had to build the camera to make that shot. True photographers built cameras. And the art of photography progressed into the moving picture. Right? So this is an example of an old shot, right? And as we see this, we can see like that's a great shot, but the camera at the time had to be designed for it. And the technology progresses, the art progresses, and we get to this. Does anyone know the significance of this image? Does anyone recognize it? This image revolutionized cinematography. This is from the movie Citizen Kane. And this is the first time in the history of cinema where you had the front and the background in focus. This was heavily complex. It was about lighting, it was about aperture, it was about the camera. There was a dolly thing where actually the image starts outside and pulls back. And all of that came together. You can see the craftsman there. His name was Greg Toland. He was a cinematographer. But this was also at a time when the entire industry was changing. Because up until that time, the person who ran the movie was the head photographer. Now we have the director. But back then, the head photographer ran the movie, and then there were actors, and there was a head actor. But the head actor was under the head photographer. At some point, because of the way we start to consume films, we start to consume based on actors. The director became the head actor became the director, and the cinematographer went underneath. But what we see here is the same thing, where as actors are progressing in their art, they're becoming directors. They're working with a group of actors, and eventually, to progress their art, to make the best movies they can, they have to become directors, which means their teams are not only actors, but cinematographers, producers, everything. So we can start to see that your team extends you. And this is one of the best managers I ever worked with. This is his advice to me. He's like, you are responsible for your team's flow. So as a craftsperson, when you start, we want to get in this idea of flow where we're doing things, we're working, we're uninterrupted, and we're achieving something as a craftsperson, as an artist. But as you progress, you start to be responsible for other people doing that. And that's a totally different challenge, but it's something that we need to get good at if we're going to be as good entrepreneurs as we can be. And of course, this extends, right? Community. Anybody recognize him? This is Steve Biko. Has anyone heard of Nelson Mandela? Steve Biko was a student leader in South Africa under apartheid. He was a philosopher, and he was teaching people who were growing up in this world where they were taught that the best thing they could aspire to be was a white person. He was teaching them to think freely. But he knew he couldn't do it with just his writing. So over his very short, unfortunately short life, he built communities. And those communities were an extension of him and an extension of his thought. And we see this in startups too, right? This is Lean Camp in Sofia. We help each other out. We want to achieve something great. As community leaders, we help other community leaders. if you're building a startup, you're trying to change the world a certain way, all right, like we just heard, it's about people. We've got to find the ones that align with us. We've got to help them do the same thing we want to do. So there's a connection here between hacker culture and craftsmanship. Hackers build the tools they need. Linus Torvalds, what is the best tool he ever made as a hacker? Anybody? Open source? Linux? Those were his art forms. That's what he produced. In order to run an open source project of such a scale, where new versions are going out daily and thousands of developers are working on it on any given day, he had to create new source management tools. This is where Git comes from. He looked at the existing tools and he looked at what he wanted to achieve and he said, well, that doesn't work, so what I need to do is build a new source control tool, and he built Git. Anyone know this guy? So this guy's a bit of a nutball. I just found out about him yesterday. He's building a giant spider robot that he can ride. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And he's like, and so that's his art. But the constraint he's given himself is he's doing it in the forest. Like he's just living in a tent and he has to build a robot. So when he started it, he's like, I'm gonna need wood for this. I'm gonna need to cut that wood. So what tool will I need? Well, I'm gonna need a sawmill. So he starts by building a sawmill. And he builds this entire industry around him, his like own personal little industry, while he's living isolated in the woods. And eventually built a giant robot that he can ride around. He's a hacker. I'm sorry, I'm impressed with this. Sanjit Bhatia is a hacker scientist. So she works in research, but she realized that the research she's doing is not going to have a benefit unless it can actually go help people. So in a similar to a way of like being a programmer and realizing that what I need to do, if my skill is actually going to have benefit to people, I'll need to become an entrepreneur so I have that contact with the people I'm helping. She went into clinics. And she's designed, because of that attitude, she's designed a way to detect cancer that involves a quick injection, eating a bit of yogurt, and then doing a urine test. Instead of the huge mechanical apparatus you need in modern medicine to detect cancer, she's finding a way to do that in other parts of the world that need cancer detection. Again, it's all about the attitude, right? It's all about the craftsmanship. Do not be limited by the tools and practices that are around you. We want to be good at what we do, so we can build on those. We can be hackers. We can be true master craftspeople. And that's how we're truly going to do the best, greatest things that impact the world, that come out of Sofia, that come out of Bulgaria, that come out of right here. So I hope that gives you some food for thought. And hey, I'll be around afterwards. I'll also be around over the next few weeks, months, year. So please come talk to me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.